Hey everyone, and welcome back to Rank and File Sports. And today we're going to be hopping right back into our series where we are predicting every single Power 4 team's record by the start of the college football season, continuing with our number 16 team in our top 25 preseason poll, which is the NC State Wolfpack. NC State's bringing in Grayson McCall as a transfer quarterback from Coastal Carolina, and he is very experienced, which will provide a good anchor for the team on offense and overall set them up really well to potentially be a dark horse in the ACC. NC State has a really easy game to start off the season against Western Carolina, and I think this is actually going to be really key for them. It gives Grayson McCall an excellent opportunity to really get situated with the offense in a game time scenario against a team that's just not going to be any threat to win whatsoever. So it's going to give him probably a good full half of playing time where he can see the full offense and just, get to experience a lot of different types of play calls and score a lot of points, which will help build confidence for their big matchup against Tennessee in week 2. They're playing this one up in Bank of America Stadium. So this one's really kind of like a home game for NC State. They're going to be playing pretty close to their home field and are probably going to have a decent advantage as far as that goes. Both teams are going to be having new quarterbacks to the offense this year. However, NC State is going to be more experienced in that position. Louisiana Tech should be another pretty easy game for them before a difficult road trip to Clemson. I expect this game to be really, really good, and it's definitely going to come down to the fourth quarter, in my opinion. Home field advantage is definitely going to help Clemson, but this one could go either way. Northern Illinois, once again, shouldn't really be much of an issue. Same with Syracuse. They brought in Kyle McCord from Ohio State. He was really just helped by a lot of great receivers last year. I see him taking a step back this year in a Syracuse offense that isn't nearly as talented as the one he had at Ohio State last year. The road trip to Cal could actually be kind of tricky. It is right before our bye week, so there's not much potential for looking ahead to anything. But just because it's so far of a road trip, I could maybe see NC State losing this game in an upset. After that bye week, they have home games against Stanford and Duke. Not worried about Stanford too much. The same thing kind of goes for them in this scenario with the long road trip. The game against Duke, Duke did pull off some upsets last year. They beat Clemson, they beat Notre Dame. They could maybe beat NC State, but the fact that it's at home for NC State, I think they will be favored. But I do see this one as being kind of close. Then they've got their second bye week. Both of them were towards the end of the season, which is a little bit unfortunate for NC State. But if they do make a playoff push, that could help them in the long run. Then they have a road trip to Georgia Tech, and I don't really see them losing this game. I just don't think Georgia Tech is going to be good enough. And finally, road trip to North Carolina. I think this is going to be a pretty good game, rivalry matchup. It's going to be very close, but the home team probably will have the advantage this time, even though NC State will likely be ranked higher. So they have a total of 7 home games and 4 away games with that neutral site against Tennessee, which, like I said, is almost like an 8th home game for them. They have a total of 2 top 25 opponents in our rank and file top 25, and an overall schedule difficulty of 3.5 out of 10.
Starting off the guaranteed wins for NC State, we have Western Carolina, Louisiana Tech, Northern Illinois, and Stanford. The first 3 are pretty self-explanatory. NC State just has way more talent than any of these 3 teams, specifically Western Carolina, who is an FCS school. NC State's got a pretty weak non-conference schedule this year, aside from their neutral site matchup against Tennessee. The closest game should be against Stanford. Of these 4 guaranteed wins we have placed for NC State. They're an ACC opponent. Coach Troy Taylor used to be the head coach at Sac State, and they got a program that's usually abysmal to a very respectable position in FCS. So he could be building something in a state that is rich for recruiting. despite the fact that Stanford and Cal are now in a conference that is weaker than where USC and UCLA is in the Big Ten. But either way, Stanford is going to struggle this year in the ACC, and NC State's going to be a team that's a player in that conference, so it's hard to expect Stanford to put up much of a fight against them this year. Examining the likely wins for this NC State Wolfpack team going into 2024, we have Wake Forest, Syracuse, Cal, Duke, and Georgia Tech. As for Wake Forest, this is not the same Wake Forest team of 2 years ago where they had Sam Hartman as quarterback and went all the way to the ACC championship game. They'll probably still be a pretty decent team, probably middle of the pack ACC this year, most likely a bowl team, but this NC State team we believe is in the upper echelon of ACC teams, so we don't expect Wake to be able to take them down. As for Syracuse, they did add transfer quarterback Kyle McCord from Ohio State. He took a lot of criticism from the Buckeye fan base last year after they perceived his performance as not up to par, but he does have a fairly strong arm. He is accurate and he's a smart kid, so Syracuse will be improved. But again, we don't think that NC State is going to drop this game due to the fact that they are just a very well-rounded team, and they themselves brought in a very solid transfer quarterback in Grayson McCall. As for Cal, they just don't have the talent. This is a team that has consistently made a name for themselves over the past few years by playing spoiler in the now defunct Pac-12 conference. So we actually have NC State losing this game, but in all practicality, we don't expect NC State to truly lose. We just think that this is a possible upset scenario. With Duke, their coach is now gone. He's the head coach at Texas A&M, and Riley Leonard is now the quarterback at Notre Dame instead. So they have lost a considerable amount of talent as well as their head coach. So we don't expect Duke to be anywhere near as good as they've been the past couple years, although it is possible they could compete for a bowl. Georgia Tech, kind of tough to get a read on them because they did get a little bit of traction with their performance last season, but we still don't think that they're quite there. Maybe a year or two away from really starting to be a consistent 7 to 8 win team in the new look ACC. So that's why we don't have them beating NC State. Finally, we have the toss-ups for this NC State team, starting with Tennessee. This is a pretty even matchup. A lot of people are going to be picking Tennessee, but like we said in the Tennessee video, we actually have NC State winning this game in a very close one. This could end up being the game of the year when the dust settles, despite the fact that it doesn't have the allure of a rivalry game like the Red River rivalry between Oklahoma and Texas, or the game between Michigan and Ohio State. But like we said, these are two very, very evenly matched teams, two quarterbacks who are ultra talented, but we do think NC State has a better overall team. And since the game is not at Knoxville, we expect the Wolfpack to come out victorious, even though it's not at Carter Finley either. It's in Charlotte. As for Clemson and North Carolina, we do have the Wolfpack drop in both of these games. Clemson's a road game for NC State this year, so we think that the Tigers' home field advantage in Death Valley is going to be too much for NC State to overcome. And as for North Carolina, Mack Brown is a terrific coach. It's senior day for the Tar Heels in a rivalry game. So while we do think NC State is a better team on paper, we do think the Tar Heels having home field advantage, as well as Mack Brown's coaching prowess. I mean, he's a legend. He coached at Texas, won them a national championship with Vince Young as his quarterback. So, and he's an amazing recruiter. So we expect Carolina to come out with the win in this one as well. We do think it will be a very good game, but Heels do emerge victorious.
Taking a look at the schedule recap, the only game in those first three really worth mentioning is that Tennessee game. We do have NC State winning that game. I like the fact that it's close to home, and I like the experience factor at the quarterback position. I do think it's going to be really close, but I'm going to pick NC State in that one. And then I do think in the fourth game of the season, they do lose at Clemson. I think Clemson's going to be just a little bit too good this year. I like what Dabo Swinney's doing, aside from the fact that he's not taking transfers. I think he's got a good roster there. Could have been better, but I like Clemson at home in this one over NC State. Next three games should all be pretty easy for NC State. I don't see them losing any of these. And then the game against Cal, I like that as an upset pick, actually. Like I said, it's a long road trip before a bye week, and I think that with these last three games, NC State maybe will get a little bit too relaxed, and I think that they get upset here at Cal. Then after the bye week, Stanford and Duke really shouldn't be too much of a problem there. The Duke game maybe could be an upset. I just don't see Duke being quite as good as they were last year, but the history shows that it's a possibility. Second bye week and then the road trip to Georgia Tech. That one shouldn't be much of an issue for NC State, like we mentioned. And finally, the road trip to North Carolina. I do think they end the season with a loss. I like the Tar Heels at home in this game. This puts their predicted record at 9-3, with a projected record of 9.85 and 2.15. So the projected record actually shows them a little bit closer to 10-2. That makes sense because we do have a pretty big upset with that Cal game. I could potentially also see them losing to Tennessee. I do think the floor is probably going to be 8-4 here for NC State. Don't really see them losing a fifth game anywhere. And then FPI has them at 8.1 and 3.9, so they're kind of favoring Tennessee in that one, I'm thinking. And then they also have one of these other games being an upset. Puts them at a 13.9% chance to make the playoffs and a 0.3% chance to win the national championship. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in our next video.